Hello, everyone, and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we react to the Sunday morning news shows so that you do not have to watch them. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Aaron Maté. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. Happy Monday. Great to start the week with you and some of the worst people on corporate TV. Our website, as always, is usefulidiotspodcast.com. Go there to support the show, keep us going, and get bonus content. Good announcement. Our fundraiser for the Middle East Children's Alliance has just passed $20,000. So thank you to everybody who donated. There's been an option next to all of our segments on YouTube to donate. So collectively, we've raised $20,000 for Mecca, Middle East Children's Alliance. Now we're launching a new fundraiser. It's for Heal Palestine. It's founded by a previous guest on Useful Idiots, Steve Sosebee. Was that how I pronounce his name?
I think it's Sosebee, but I actually don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Steve Sosebee. And it's a wonderful organization helping wounded Palestinian children, wounded and maimed Palestinian children get medical care. They're the group that was at the center of the decision by Marco Rubio recently at the behest of Laura Loomer to ban medical visas for Palestinians because Laura Loomer couldn't take the sight of seeing wounded Palestinian kids arriving at airports to get medical treatment for the injuries, serious injuries sustained at the hands of U.S.-made bombs. So really important to support Heal, and you can click the donate button next to this video on YouTube to help us support this wonderful organization making a huge difference for children from Gaza who have been wounded and maimed by U.S.-made bombs.
Yeah. So, and thank you to everyone who's already given, and thank you ahead of time in advance to everyone who will give to this new fundraiser. And also, speaking of thanking, please, we thank you for giving this stream a like, because when you give the stream a like, you are giving freedom and democracy a like. That's. I'm just saying it. You heard it here first. Yeah. So, and of course, the great thing about liking is that you can like and you can also donate to great organizations. They're not mutually exclusive.
All right, well, let's get to our weekly recap from Meet the Depressed
with Kristen Welker.
Good Sunday morning. There are growing warning signs for President Trump's economy. More than 7 months into his second administration, the job market continues to slow down. Only 22,000 jobs were added in August, well below expectations. And the numbers for June were revised, showing 13,000 jobs were lost, the first decline in the job market since the COVID pandemic in 2020. This was the first jobs report since President Trump fired the official in charge of the jobs numbers after a weaker than expected report last month.
I mean, that's just shocking. One of the things that the Trump administration has done to encourage job growth is to kick a bunch of people off of Medicaid and make fun of them and say that they're all just playing video games in their parents' basement. And somehow that economic strategy has not yielded huge job gains in this country. I don't know. Economists will be studying that for a long time. How did that one not work out, at least so far?
Yeah, who could have ever predicted that? Total stunner, yeah.
And then you have the tariffs, which, to be honest with you, I don't really understand. But that also has not really yielded the massive job boom that I think we were told. But I think the Trump argument there would be that we need more time.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That is his argument. Yeah. But tariff talk, Aaron, we should add that. We should do doc talk and tariff talk. Except the tariff talk is important. Just we're not particularly equipped to engage in it. But we'll bring you a guest who is at some point.
Economist Mark Zandi warning the U.S. economy has entered a jobs recession. The president saying Americans will need to wait another 2 years to see the full impact of his policies on the economy.
2 years? That's a long time. I don't think we have that kind of attention span in this country. I mean, people want results fast. And 2 years, I never saw him say this before. It was 2 years. I thought he was going to say it was going to happen pretty quickly. But anyway, let's give the man his hearing.
Our big year won't be really next year. I think it'll be the year after, because when these plants start opening up, it takes a period of time to build them. We're going to have tremendous job growth.
This week, the White House asked the Supreme.
But what plants is he building? Like, I know there's a lot of AI stuff to enrich his, tech friends. More AI things to, steal our water, which is which is an overlooked aspect of all this because AI is powered by water, including drinking water. So
Yeah.
what's not to love there? But like what, I'm not even sure like what massive new plants are going into production that are really going to provide the jobs that he's bragging about.
Yeah. Another interesting point is that he imagine like his responding to Biden if Biden had said, well, you're not seeing any of the effects. You're not seeing some of the effects of my policies right now. You're going to have to wait a couple of years. Something tells me that Trump would not have a very accepting view of that analysis.
Make America great again in 2 years' time, everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Start your clocks. Start your
MAGA
clocks.
2, MAGA 2 years. Yeah.
Supreme Court to move quickly to rule on the president's power to impose his global tariffs after a federal appeals court ruled that he had exceeded his authority. The president issuing a dire warning if the court doesn't rule in his favor.
We have a very, very big case in the Supreme Court. I can only say this. Our country has a chance to be unbelievably rich again, but it can also be unbelievably poor again. If we don't win that case, our country is going to suffer so greatly.
He said the exact same thing about whether or not he wins the election. He was like,
Right,
if I don't win, we are effed. We are screwed. This country is over unless I win because only I can make America great again. Now he's saying after winning, he also needs a court case. Come on.
Yeah. So all I need from you is a court case and 2 years, and then we're going to make America great again.
And after he wins the court case, assuming he does, then what's he going to say? Like, okay, now we also need you to all invest in the Trump meme coin and buy up some properties in one of my many resorts. I don't know. Like, it just, I feel like he's going to keep raising the stakes because, newsflash, he's not making America great again.
Yeah. Sorry to let you guys down.
And joining me now exclusively is Treasury.
Oh, I can't wait to hear from Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. That's going to be exciting. Stay tuned. Well, okay. Well, listen.
And by the way, just want to announce that, of course, something that was not covered on the show, certainly not in the preview that we just saw, Gaza. Nothing about the destruction of high-rises. Nothing about the continued murder of the people of Gaza. Zero coverage of that. Nothing about the global Samud flotilla, of course. So that goes with the territory, but it's still worth mentioning.
Yeah, and Trump's latest, pretend ceasefire offer to Hamas is basically he's saying, release all the captives, and then something good will probably happen. If you don't, then it's all over. So like he's not even pretending to like try to negotiate with Hamas anymore. It's just basically issuing like an ultimatum. And just like he said to Hamas, like, hey, if you release Israeli American soldier Adon Alexander, like we'll do good things for you. Like we'll get that blockade lifted. We're just not going to commit to it in writing. Of course, what happened? Hamas did release Adon Alexander as a goodwill gesture, and the genocide and the blockade continued.
Right. So disgusting. And yeah, no mention the entire show of anything Gaza related.
Okay, well, there's a proxy war still going on in Ukraine, and over the weekend, Russia launched a massive assault on Ukraine. I think one of the biggest since the start of its invasion. And so, because the Sunday news shows also double as an episode of "Are we sanctioning Russia yet?" Right, this is an ongoing theme we've covered, where the cable news hosts just really want to know, when are we putting more sanctions on Russia? Just like when kids ask on a road trip, are we there yet? Exactly. The hosts are asking, are we sanctioning Russia yet? So here is the latest edition of Are We Sanctioning Russia Yet? With Margaret Brennan of Face the Nation, speaking to Kevin Hassett, the White House economic advisor.
Has launched a very significant attack on Ukraine, and in Kyiv, they actually even hit a Ukrainian government building. Does the U.S. condemn the assault? And what are you waiting for now in terms of triggering those sanctions on Russia?
Well, how many times have we heard this question? It's like there's every week or two. It's like, when are you going to put more sanctions on Russia?
You know what? Who is it that goes, what you're waiting, what you're waiting, what you're waiting, what you're waiting, what you're waiting for? You should do it.
Doesn't ring a bell. Sorry, it doesn't ring a bell. Right. But yeah.
Hopefully I didn't make that song up. I don't think so. Sometimes
hey.
I sing to my dogs. I just make up songs to
Sure.
Bodie or Bucky. But I don't think what you're waiting for is something I just sang to Bucky. I'll find out. We'll let you know by the end of the show.
Well, we're waiting for sanctions, everybody.
Yeah.
What gets us up in the morning every day? Like what gets Americans out of bed? It's the thought of more sanctions on Russia because
sanctions talk.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm not one of the foreign policy advisors of the president, but at the National Economic Council, we are responsible for making sure that sanctions get enforced and that people that are helping Russia with their war against Ukraine, as for example, India has been doing, by buying Russian oil, that we're ready to respond to them economically. And, the last night's news is very disappointing. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of talk today and tomorrow about the level of sanctions and the timing of sanctions.
The timing of additional sanctions
Perhaps, yes,
on Russia.
I mean, it's up to the president in the end, but yes, it's a very disappointing set of affairs.
It's so funny. He looks so calm, doesn't he? Like he looks like he's meditated right before coming on the show. He's doing a great job. It doesn't seem like he's taking this very seriously, by the way.
Who knows? Maybe the Trump administration has the most Zen cabinet in U.S. history.
Right.
They're so at peace with themselves. With MAGA, it's Maha. It's a big part of their brand is making everybody healthy. So, maybe mindfulness is a requirement now to work.
Oh yeah. Maybe it could be Mama, make America mindful again, or make America meditate again. Yeah.
Yeah. Sign me up. Yeah. But I mean, this constant obsession with sanctioning Russia. First of all, I mean, whatever. Like just looking at it as a tactic, it hasn't worked.
Right.
Like, this has been like, Joe Biden, remember in the early months of Russia's invasion, he was bragging all the time about how we're going to turn the ruble into, how we did turn the ruble into rubble, and Russia's economy is going to be harmed for generations to come. That's what William Burns, his director of the CIA, said. Hasn't even happened. Like, it doesn't work. It's somehow Russia, I think, probably factored in all this when they decided to launch the invasion. And so they made contingencies. They've turned heavily to China. That's where they're sending a lot of their energy now. They're still sending energy to Europe. It just Europe kind of won't acknowledge it. So it ends up just costing Europe more money, which is fine by Russia, I guess. So this whole sanction thing hasn't even worked as a tactic, but yet that's all we can still talk about. And by the way, where's the question about, I don't know, sanctioning Israel, which is committing genocide? Can we ever talk about that? No.
Exactly. And, it's interesting because, of course, Marco Rubio himself was saying that sanctions weren't working. So I guess they've changed their tune, or they're just doing it for the hell of it, or they're going to do it for the hell of it. Or maybe they're just tired of telling people like Margaret Brennan, they're coming. But also, speaking of sanctions against Israel, Spain has declared sanctions against Israel. They're doing an arms embargo on all weapon sales to Israel, blocking the use of Spanish ports and airspace, restrictions for fuel and military materials, denying entry for those involved in genocide. So that would be a nice thing to see other people. Also, other countries do. They're also increasing financial support for UNRWA in the Palestinian Authority, and sending more humanitarian aid to Gaza. So why isn't Margaret Brennan ever ask officials about those sanctions?
Yeah, speaking of sanctions, who did the Trump administration just sanction? They sanctioned a bunch of Palestinian human rights groups,
right?
Who have been trying to use the justice system, or what's left of it, to hold Israeli war criminals to account. So what did Marco Rubio do? He announced sanctions on groups like Al-Haq, groups like the Palestinian Center for Human Rights. And what did Israel just do right after the Trump administration sanctioned the Palestinian Center for Human Rights? They bombed the building where it's located. There's a building in Gaza that's just been destroyed, the Al Roya Tower, which hosts human rights groups, social services groups, legal groups, and Israel has just bombed it as part of their ongoing demolition of Palestinian existence. So Israel follows the Trump administration's lead after sanctioning the Palestinian Center for Human Rights by blowing up their offices.
So gross.
Okay.
Oh, and by the way, very important, perhaps the most important piece of information you're going to get from me during this entire stream. What you're waiting for, that is a song by Gwen Stefani.
Okay. All right. Well, thank God we have useful idiots to provide you with all your pop culture needs, So there you go, everybody. Okay. Let's keep going on Ukraine, but we'll have more on Gaza shortly. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, he spoke to Martha Raddatz of ABC News about Vladimir Putin's recent suggestion that if Zelenskyy wants to have peace talks, that he should come to Moscow. This is Zelenskyy's response.
He will meet if you come to Moscow.
He can come to Kiev. You know, if a person doesn't want to meet during the war, of course he can propose something which can't be acceptable by me or by others. It's understandable. I can't go to Moscow when my country is under missiles, under attacks.
1 second. Also, why are they doing this interview like in a junkyard?
Well, it's obviously carefully staged. They want to show like a place where Russia is presumably attacked.
Right.
So he's there being defiant in the wreckage.
Right. It looks so even if it is a real place, it's just so forced. Who would ever suggest like this is a great place to sit down and have an interview? I mean, obviously, as you're saying, it has a propagandistic value, but it is a little absurd.
Today, I can't go to this capital of these terrorists. It's understandable, and he understands it. It's the same proposition, as I said, that he has to come to Kiev. Yeah, so it's understandable that he is doing it to postpone the meeting. I always said we can't trust Putin. He plays games, and he's playing games with the United States. I think so. It's to my mind.
Do you think the possibility for a bilateral meeting is dead at this point?
No. It was signal from the president and from President Trump, and I said, look, Mr. President, I'm ready for any kind of meeting, but not in Russia. Any kind of meeting, bilateral. Trilateral, will be happy if you will be, and even preconditions which we had at the very beginning of the year, that ceasefire and then meeting. Then we spoke about security guarantees and then meeting. By the way, I'm thankful to the United States that if in the Washington, D.C., when we had meeting, the president said that America will be in security guarantees, and I hope that it will be.
I know you don't want to give any details about what you specifically discussed in Paris, but they have said they will provide security guarantees if there is a ceasefire, if there is peace. Tell us what you can. Does that mean thousands of troops, European troops, not U.S.?
The first is a strong Ukrainian army, and I think that everybody understands it.
This whole thing is just so sad. I mean, we have to repeat this because it's a buried fact. Like the rest of the media will never acknowledge that there was a tentative peace deal reached by Ukrainians and Russians more than 3 years ago in Istanbul. Joe Biden, Boris Johnson got in the way. Zelenskyy listened to them. Initially Ukraine had some success afterwards, so it was a seeming vindication of the stance of rejecting a peace deal because they ended up kicking Russia out of Kherson and Kharkiv. Although under the peace deal that they rejected, the troops would have left anyway. But regardless. And that's when Mark Milley, the top U.S. military official, this is now 3 years ago, came out and said there should be negotiations now. Ukraine's gone as far as it could go. It should consolidate its gains. Let's have peace. And the Biden administration overruled him, even though he's the top military officer in the country. So you think he might know what he's talking about. And now here we are. And Zelensky's, sure. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a meeting between Zelenskyy and Putin. Putin's seeking a surrender at this point. And I don't think Zelensky's going to give it to him. So I think this war is destined to go on for a long time.
And, it is so incredible. Like the meeting that happened that you just referred to, right? The fact that this could have been dealt with and that every single time this is brought up, the media makes a conscious decision to not include that information, right? Like imagine how they could use that as a question. Do you think that it was a mistake now? I mean, they could ask American officials, they could ask Western officials, Boris Johnson, they could ask Russian officials, Ukrainian, but, it's just unbelievable how it just does not fit the narrative.
And there's a clip. I mean, we played the clip before. There's a Ukrainian negotiator who was there in Istanbul named Alexander Chali, and he said, we reached a real compromise in Istanbul. And he said Putin did everything possible to make peace. That's not a Russian saying that. That's a Ukrainian. So, yeah, if people cared about making peace, they could play that and say, why not try to revive that compromise? And or some approximation of it, because Russia's not going to offer as good a deal as they did then from Ukraine's perspective. But no, it's just off limits because the narrative here requires that we paint Russia as intractable and we have to fight them and just keep sacrificing Ukrainians in the process, all for proxy war. And then at the end, Zelensky's talking about security guarantees as if the US is going to give them anything, but they're not. So like sad. Just as they're not going to give them even NATO. NATO was dangled in front of them to bait Russia.
So gross.
And but anyway,
imagine that being a question, right? I mean, all these incredibly relevant things just to document the record that can't get covered at all. And then we have to go on this show, which we love doing, and remind you guys like every other week, just because nobody talks about it. It's such an important part of the discussion and about what got us there. One other thing I want to say, this actually, I thought about this and I forgot to mention it, but Anton Dilemma writes about the junkyard, what I called the junkyard background set. This is not unlike the air raid sirens that went off during Biden visit. Whoa, that was really weird, Aaron. You had sirens going off right as I read that out loud.
Well, I carefully choreographed that because we try to add dramatic effect here in Useful Idiots, high production values. And so yeah. Okay, let's hear more of Zelenskyy.
To have a security.
What does victory look like in Ukraine?
Victory, to my mind, Putin's goal is to occupy Ukraine. This is to destroy us, occupy. And did he occupy it?
No.
It mean that he didn't win. It means that we have Ukraine.
But he still wants to win.
Yes, but till he didn't occupy us, we win. And I think.
Okay, well, he did occupy 20% of your country, and he's taking more. And hundreds of thousands of people have been lost on both sides. And yes, that's not all Ukraine's fault. I mean, Putin decided to launch the invasion, and so he decided to take actions that ultimately led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. So this doesn't absolve him, but you, Zelenskyy, also had an opportunity to end the war with a peace deal that your own people negotiated, and say you listened to Boris Johnson and Joe Biden, and now you're claiming that it's victory because Russia didn't occupy all of Ukraine, which they never wanted to do. All they wanted to do was resolve the issue in the Donbass, where the Ukrainian government was shelling the parts of the Donbass that were rebelling against the coup that began in 2014, and was refusing to implement the Minsk Accords, which was supposed to address the grievances of ethnic Russians and Ukraine. And so that was Russia's goal. That's why they didn't send in nearly enough troops to occupy all the country. I do think they wanted regime change, and I think they thought it would happen, which they were surprised by. So you can say that was a victory, that Zelensky's still in power from Ukraine's perspective. But the idea that Russia wants to occupy all of Ukraine, that's baseless.
Yeah. And again, this idea again that like the US cares about Ukraine is just so sad. And they're always talking about, the agency of the Ukrainian people. But this actually reminds me of a Kissinger quote. It may be dangerous to be America's enemy, but to be America's friend is fatal.
I hate to be a party pooper or a wet blanket, but that that Kissinger quote, I don't think it actually came from him. Everyone thinks it came from him, but
apocryphal.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
All right, we'll find out. Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry to be a wet blanket. Everybody attributes that quote to Kissinger, though. So
no, you know what? It's good because what other show do you get Kissinger quote fact checks?
There you go. Okay, let's turn now to Israel-Palestine. CNN's Fareed Zakaria had on two guests. One of them is Rob Malley, who was an official under the Clinton, Obama, and Biden administrations. And of all the people in government, like visibly, he, I think, is the most fair-minded when it comes to the issue of Israel-Palestine. Like, for example, when Bill Clinton would go in front of the public and lie about how Palestinians rejected this really generous Israeli peace offer at Camp David in July 2000, Rob Malley, who was there, basically called BS on that, said, no, it's not true. So Rob Malley's someone who, unlike everybody else in government, doesn't totally kiss the feet of Israel and parrot its propaganda. And he's written a new book that I'm looking forward to reading. So he was on CNN's Fareed Zakaria, along with Dan Senor, who's the author of I can't believe I haven't heard of these genius books because they sound so great. The co-author of The Genius of Israel, okay, and also Startup Nation, which I assume is about how, like, what a wonderful tech hub Israel is. Yeah. Oh, it's called it's called Startup Nation: The Story of Israel's Economic Miracle. Okay, and by economic miracle they mean stealing someone else's land, ethnically cleansing them, stealing their culture, stealing their olive groves, their orange groves, stealing their culture, stealing their resources. And that's the economic miracle of Israel, as documented by Dan Senor in his book, Startup Nation. And also,
sounds like a very objective person to talk about.
I'm sorry, I'm neglecting this part. Another part of the economic miracle of Israel is to be heavily subsidized by the world's most powerful country, whose taxpayers have to give Israel billions of dollars every single year to prop up its existence and arm it to the teeth. And that's the economic miracle of Israel. It's truly a miracle from God.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, we'll have to do a whole other show on the Kissinger thing. I think it was said by him to William F. Buckley in Vietnam, but that doesn't matter, obviously, because I wasn't saying it was this, but we'll do a whole other show on that. Sorry to be a
so you've Googled the quote, and you think you said, according to your sources, Kissinger did say, all right, well, listen, I tentatively stand corrected, but
all right, yeah,
I will do my own Google and we'll see what I can come up with, because I'm pretty positive that he didn't actually say it. But anyway,
you stand like on one foot corrected, and you're waiting to put the other foot down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay. Let's go to Dan Senor.
Try to go into Gaza. It's going to be just sort of more what we see. So a lot of people who I think supported Israel on October 7th, supported a lot of the war, do feel like it feels like it's just going on and on. It's not really a war anymore. You have one of the world's most powerful armies against.
It never was a war, Fareed. It never was a war. It was, from day one, as Israeli officials openly said, an extermination of the civilian population, of a defenseless civilian population. And yeah, to the extent that there was fighting, it's when Israeli ground troops went in and lightly armed Hamas fighters engaged in combat. But that's not a war. This is just an outright genocide going on for now nearly 2 years. So it never was a war.
Right. That's a very good point. And it's something that I think it was Norman Finkelstein who says, like, every single time the media calls this a war, it's a PR propaganda victory for Israel.
Well, if you want to have another propaganda victory for Israel, just listen to the argument of Dan Senor, co-author of Startup Nation, the economic miracle of Israel. I can't wait to hear his insights.
One other point, by the way. So you see, he said, Fareed said, amongst what looks to be Palestinian civilians, right? He said that there is definitely some Palestinian combatants in and amongst what looks to be Palestinian civilians. Do you think he would ever say that about Israelis? Like, would he ever say Hamas's October 7th assault, there were definitely some Israeli combatants in and amongst what looks to be Israeli civilians? Something tells me that he would not. Yeah. And by the way, Senor, is that how we say his name? Senor? Dan Senor? You know what else he should get credit for? Being chief spokesman for the Coalition Provisional Authority in Iraq.
Oh, wow. That's where I recognize his name from. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also senior foreign policy advisor to presidential candidate Mitt Romney during the 2012 election.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, I can't wait to hear his insights.
What look like women and children, the occasional militant hidden.
What look like women and children? What are we talking about? Like, are the women and children we're seeing massacred every day, like possibly people in disguise?
Right.
Like, what is he talking about?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like all this weaselly caveats you have to put out just to be like tangentially critical of Israel. It's like there's it's like you can't just say a direct sentence. You have to throw in a million qualifiers to render your words completely useless. You might as well just not talk. You might as well just say, like what's the point of saying all this if you're going to qualify everything with to completely dilute its meaning? Anyway. Yeah.
And sorry, I got ahead of the quote. Sorry, I got ahead of the quote with my analysis, but he was in the midst of saying that. Yeah.
What is the strategic purpose at this point, and where does it lead you?
I'll answer that. I just want to come back to one thing Rob said. The talk of genocide, which is a term that has been grossly manipulated over the last few months, to me, the single question, you want to know which party is responsible for a genocide or attempted genocide.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dan, but are you really proposing that you know more about genocide than the International Association of Genocide Scholars, Bet Selem, Physicians for Human Rights Israel, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Omar Bartov, Ross Siegel, Ori Goldberg? The list goes on and on and on. There's nothing that he says, by the way, to debunk the claim that it's genocide. All he does is pivot to blaming Palestinians. But he really, every time that someone says this, they should be called out. So what Fareed Zakaria should be saying is, oh, so you disagree with the recent historic assessment of the International Association of Genocide Scholars? Anyway, Fareed, I hope you're watching for the next time someone lies about this not being genocide.
Just ask this simple question. If Israel were to drop its arms today, period, full stop, there would be no Israel. All Israelis would be wiped out. If Hamas were to drop its arms today, there would be no Palestinian civilian human catastrophe that Rob is worried about, the Palestinian civilians being collateral damage. That's just the reality. So
I like the way he says no civilian collateral damage that Rob is worried about. Like, he doesn't even pretend that he cares about this. I kind of admire that. Like, he's like, look, you guys who care about civilians being killed, I'm just going to refer to it as collateral damage, but you guys are upset about that. So why don't you, let's blame Hamas for that. But note that he doesn't at all debunk why it's genocide.
The missing element here that he's missing, and then unfortunately he's not corrected on, is that, if it's like Israel's arms that it would drop are used to sustain a genocide that's actually happening before our eyes, and that genocide is in defense of one of the longest running military occupations in the world, which begins with stealing Palestinian land, ethnically cleansing hundreds of thousands of people, and putting millions of Palestinians under a brutal occupation and siege that's been going on for decades and decades and decades. Right. So it's not as if Israel dropping its arms would change anything, because the point is those arms sustain a military occupation and a dispossession of an entire people that is now being continued with the destruction of an entire society inside of Gaza. So it's like he positions as if these are two equal parties, right, with parity, and as if the quality of arms are the same. Like, Palestinians have some light weapons in Gaza that they can use to, like, fire rockets that barely do any damage in Israel and to defend themselves when Israelis invade. But otherwise, Israel is the most powerful military in the region, and they've been using their arsenal to destroy Gaza. But he has it like completely flipped, as if Israel's fighting some existential war, right, when all they're doing is wiping out the existence of Palestinians.
Right. And also his argument is so bad on so many levels, but basically he's saying this is not genocide because, and then he basically justifies what Israel's doing based on the specter of something that, as you just pointed out, Aaron, wouldn't happen and certainly isn't happening. And this is, there is a history of this, a precedent of this, right? So people constantly use the threat of annihilation by the people that they are brutalizing. We saw that with slavery, right? They had to keep people enslaved, or else they would rise up and kill them. Colonialism, you had to occupy them to justify extermination. The Nazis used the Bolshevik threat to do the same. They also said that they had to kill Jewish children because if not, they would be avenging them for killing their parents. Yeah. And another thing is, like, if Israel stopped the occupation, ended the ongoing Nakba, apartheid, settler colonialism, began, actual reparations, giving Palestinians their freedom, then October 7th wouldn't have happened. So by his logic, it should be argued that this is Israel's fault. Israel's responsible for the October 7th massacres. Just a thought. All right, let's hear from this guy again.
Ask yourself that question. Israel drops its arms, it's wiped out. That's the answer to the question.
Oh, and also, by the way, how many times have Palestinians been attacked while not using arms? Like the Great March of Return, this total falsehood that if only the Palestinians weren't being violent, then they wouldn't be attacked, they wouldn't be killed, they wouldn't be mowed down. Not true.
As to who's attempting a genocide. As it relates to Gaza City, Look, I think there are two things going on. One, Israel has stayed out of Gaza City. It is a Hamas stronghold. There's a reason why there's a number of reasons it stayed out of Gaza City, one of which is it's understood that that's where a lot of the hostages are. But there's increasingly a view among the Israeli leadership, mostly the political leadership, that unless Gaza City is taken, it's sort of like the Berlin or the Moscow for Hamas, that Hamas will climb out of the rubble in any post-war situation and live to fight another day. And that's just unacceptable. That if Israel really wants to crush Hamas, it has to take Gaza City.
My sense is, correct me if I'm wrong, about all this international criticism that Israel is getting. The Israeli view, particularly on the right, is who cares? We are going to win, and then they'll have to deal with us.
I have been frustrated by the Israeli attitude and what I think is at times incompetence in dealing with what I feel like the walls closing in internationally and Israel's.
Again, it's so amazing. He doesn't care about the Palestinians being killed. He's upset that Israel isn't doing a better PR job, right?
Exactly,
the walls,
exactly.
Yeah, coming in.
That's the extent to which you can criticize Israel on corporate TV. Yeah. It's like, are they handling their PR crisis well enough? Are they listening, or are they pretending to listen to their allies, to the enlightened European nations who represent virtue in the world, and are they paying enough attention to their concerns? Like, that's the extent to which you can basically criticize Israel. But listen, he's saying so many falsehoods here, and unfortunately, neither Fareed or Rob Malley are interrupting him. But like, he has everything skewed. Israel is the only aggressor here,
right? Only aggressor.
It's the occupying power. It's devoted to destroying an entire society, and this idea that like he's making an explicitly genocidal statement. He's saying that because there are members of a militant group that resists a military occupation, because they're still alive in Gaza City, and therefore it's okay to go and destroy Gaza City and all the civilians along with it. That's what he's basically saying. It's like, but nowhere in this segment is a recognition that there's an illegal military occupation that is no legitimacy whatsoever. And that's why, it has to be stressed. Israel never had the right to fire a single bullet into Gaza. It's an occupying power, so you don't have a right to defend yourself against an occupied people. You have the obligation to stop occupying them, and that's of course totally missing here from this conversation. All right, can we take more of this guy?
Let's hear a little bit more. Yeah.
Ham-handed way of telling its story and explaining its position. I think there's a sense that, as you said, Israel will win. This will pass. Israel's popularity plummets whenever Israel's fighting wars. We saw that in the Second Lebanon War in 2006. We saw that in the First Lebanon War in the early 80s. It always happens. And then Israel rebounds. Israel will get through this, and it will rebound. 2 years is different from the 2014 Gaza War.
A few weeks.
Yeah, this is we're in a different arena now. And I will say to both of you, when you say there's no strategic reason for Israel to go into Gaza City, again, I think
this is what Israel's own generals are saying.
There's
former prime ministers.
There are disagreements. I mean, within the Israeli security, there were disagreements in the Israeli security establishment about a whole range of these geopolitical issues. So I just think the majority of Israelis, even though they want a hostage deal, they want the war to end. If you ask a majority of Israelis, what will it mean for the end of the war if Hamas is still in power and able to pose a threat to Israel again? And that's a much different question. And that is why, when there was a vote in the Knesset not long ago, just a couple months ago, about saying no to a future Palestinian state, period, full stop, Israeli political leaders from right to left voted for that. Benny Gantz voted for.
So that's Hamas's fault. That's all Hamas's fault, because they're scared of us. When they've been opposing a Palestinian state for decades and decades and decades and building up illegal settlements that make a Palestinian state impossible. So this idea that this is because of Hamas, when Israel's been trying to crush Palestinian self-determination before Hamas even existed, is just such a joke. And this whole thing is based on a false premise. Like, Fareed Zakaria is saying, like, what's the strategic reason for going into Gaza? Like, that presumes Israel has a strategic reason beyond just they're insane mass murderers. They're genocidal fanatics who can't tolerate the existence of Palestinians as a people. So you can't assign to Israel any kind of like strategic thinking when their only strategy is just destroying Palestinians as a people.
Yeah. And also, the fact that like they all oppose a two-state solution or a Palestinian state, that's an indictment of them. Like, that's not something that he should be pointing to as anything except for look at what lying bags of feces these people are. When I say these people, I mean, I'm talking about
It's like basically say, it's like, like say there's like a black church in a southern town in the Jim Crow era, and everybody in the town, all the white people in town show up
exactly
to like attack the church. An apologist might say, well, this speaks to the fear that these white people have of the black, that the fact that everybody in the town, left to right, across the spectrum, showed up to burn crosses and attack and firebomb the church. This speaks to the real fear, and we have to address the fear of the white racist. That's what this Jewish supremacist is saying, and of course, with no challenge whatsoever on corporate TV.
So disgusting.
Okay. All right. I mean, there's a lot more, but I think that's all we can take.
Yeah, I think we've spared. We have to spare people. Yeah.
Yeah. What a terrible job by Fareed Zakaria. I mean, anyway. Okay. Senator Mark Warner, what does he have to say about the fact that Trump just bombed a boat that left Venezuela, killing a bunch of people on board? Trump administration claimed with no evidence that this was carrying drugs, but even if that were true, what right does Trump have to go just assassinate people near Venezuela for transporting drugs, if that's even what they were doing? How are Democrats pushing back on this? And how are Democrats pushing back on what looks like a Trump effort to revive his regime change plot in Venezuela, which he kicked off in his first term? Well, here is Democratic Senator Mark Warner of the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Tell me about this campaign, it would seem, in Latin America with the United States taking out this drug boat.
Note how she doesn't say like alleged drug boat, right? Or proposed drug boat. It's just that it is a drug boat. So she totally accepts on its face and incorporates it into her question.
Secretary Rubio, your former colleague on the Senate Intelligence Committee, says, quote, if you're on a boat full of cocaine or fentanyl or whatever, headed to the United States, you're an immediate threat to the United States. He is saying that as a national.
Unless you're one of Trump's rich friends partying off the coast of like Miami with cocaine and fentanyl on your boat, as I'm sure a lot of these guys do, then it's, happy sailing.
National security justification to carry out a campaign with an unclear timeline. Have you reached out to Rubio about this? Do you know anything about how it is being formulated here with the intelligence community?
Well, first of all, the Maduro regime in Venezuela are bad guys, and we obviously need to do all we can to stop fentanyl.
Great job, Mark. Great job. Great job.
Nuanced. Such sophisticated political analysis.
Yeah. Okay. So the country we're trying to overthrow, like, let's be clear, like, they're bad guys. They're bad guys. They're bad guys. So regime change, good.
Right.
Not briefing me on killing people, bad. That's going to be the message, I think, from Mark Warner.
Yeah.
We have not been briefed on this. This was a DOD. It was not an Intel project. It was a DOD project. But my fear is there are still international laws of the sea about how the process of interdicting these kind of boats. There's supposed to be a firing of a warning shot. You're supposed to try to take it peacefully. My understanding, this boat, none of those procedures are followed. And I'm going to get the full brief this week. But what I'm worried about is if we put our sailors in harm's way by violating international law, unless there is the appropriate designations, could this come back and hurt those sailors? The sailors were doing their job.
But as far as you know, this is.
So is this kind of like, what we just saw with Dan Senor being concerned about how Israel is handling the PR disaster as opposed to concerned with how Palestinians are being massacred and genocided? For him, he doesn't really care about the Venezuelans who were killed. Doesn't care about the people being killed. He cares about process. And he also cares about how this will have blowback for U.S. People.
It's fully a military operation. It is not using the intelligence assets of the.
We have not,
because the administration says they know everyone who was on that boat.
Well,
they had great clarity and fidelity.
Data, but this again goes to the point. This kind of action should be briefed to the intelligence community. And I'm a member of what's called the Gang of Eight. Those are the folks that are supposed to get the absolute secret stuff only the president gets. I've gotten no briefing.
Also, we should point out that, and we did a great interview with Vijay Prashad on this on last week's episode, but, as per Customs and Border Patrol, the vast majority of fentanyl comes from East Asia through Mexico and then into the U.S., not through Venezuela.
Well, Venezuela unfortunately has the misfortune of having some of the world's largest oil reserves and a government that is not under U.S. control and has tried to, as Vijay Prashad talked about, lift people out of poverty, and that's a no-go. That's been a long time no-no from the eyes of the U.S. You know, they've toppled many governments that tried to use their resources to help their own people, as opposed to just enriching wealthy elites and their U.S. allies. And so that's why Maduro has to go in the eyes of Trump. And you know, he's sent naval warships to surround Venezuela. And yeah, these people are Marco Rubio is so obsessed with regime change that this might be the start of something a lot larger in scale than just assassinating people on the open seas.
Right.
Okay. Senator Tammy Duckworth, what does she have to say about the attack, the deadly attack on the boat near Venezuela?
There was military action taken in America's backyard by the Trump administration.
America's backyard. I mean, I can't believe she's saying this. This is like a piece of, I mean, this is just Monroe Doctrine. This is like manifest destiny. And she's just throwing it in there without any kind of critical framing of it. You know, this is like old school racist cartoons. In fact, I'm gonna pull one of those up in a second. But thanks, Margaret.
Yeah, I think Joe Biden referred to
yeah, he did also
Latin America, but at least in Joe Biden's defense, he's like, you know, he's from that like McCarthyite generation, like, you know, he's like an old school neocon. He's in, you know, Margaret Brennan, come on, like let's leave that to the boomers, okay? Like, no need to keep that one going. It's totally offensive.
It is, yeah. And here, I'm just going to show you guys a cartoon from 1912. Shout out to Margaret for being such a history junkie. Why can't I? Oh, I have to remove. Sorry, let me remove this for a second. Here we go. There you go. That's like basically the time frame from which Margaret is using her terminology. See, Western Hemisphere chose Monroe Doctrine, and then those are the Europeans that they're keeping out because that's our backyard, not their backyard. And that's from 1912. Newspaper cartoon. Who said it better? Them or Margaret? Okay. Wilson, can you bring back up the clip?
Vance says killing cartel members who poison our fellow citizens is the highest and best use of our military. He was talking about a strike on a drug boat, alleged drug boat.
Wow, better, Margaret. Now she said alleged drug boat. Baby steps.
Off the coast of Venezuela. What do you make of that show of force?
It was an illegal move by the Trump administration. There's a thing called due process in this country, and that needed to have happened. And the fact that it happened in international order, in international waters, actually opens Americans to a similar action by our adversaries. We were just talking about Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping and getting together and showing a show of force against the United States. Well, there's nothing now to stop them from doing something like that against Americans in international waters, and it could be civilians, and they could say, you know what, those were drug boats, we're just going to go ahead and blow them out of the water. He's setting a precedence here that puts Americans in danger.
Senator Duck.
Okay, well, that's one way to criticize assassination in the high seas, is saying it's going to hurt us. Okay, well, look, at least you called it illegal. I mean, that's something.
That was true, yeah. And she called it international waters as opposed to backyard.
Yeah. But that's basically the extent to which we're allowed to criticize U.S. aggression. Is it going to hurt us? Could it one day hurt us? Well, okay. All right. I think we should maybe go a little, further than that. Like, hey, how about we not just kill people because it's illegal, period. Yeah. But hey, okay. Let's turn to Tom Homan. He is the border guy for Trump.
Border czar. Who always sounds like he's a bunch of marbles in his mouth.
Anyway, what has he got planned next? Because Trump has been talking about going to war, right, in Chicago. He's sent troops to LA, sent troops to DC, and Chicago could be next on his list. So here is border czar Tom Homan.
We keep hearing the president's going to send National Guard troops into Chicago. It has not yet happened. Help clear this up for me. Is the president talking about sending National Guard troops and other federal troops into Chicago to handle deportations or to handle violent criminals, or both, like you just referred to, violent criminals who are in this country illegally? What is the operation going to look like? Will it happen this week?
Look, National Guard are always on the table. We use them in Los Angeles, and we use them in Washington, D.C. They're a force multiplier. Now, do they arrest illegal aliens? No. They're ICE officers, Border Patrol agents who have Title VIII authority arrest illegal criminal aliens. But the National Guard does provide protection for us. It does provide us infrastructure, provides us transportation, provides us additional processing capability that allows the ones who immigration authority, the badge and guns on the street, to continue arresting the bad guy. So yeah, they're a force multiplier and they're on the table. I mean, they've been used by every administration.
By the way, I like the way he uses the bad guy. He and Mark Warner are united by their sophisticated analysis.
Since I've been working for the government, starting in 1984, every administration's used the Guard and the military on the border, and they've been very beneficial. Look at the crime change in Washington, D.C. Look what they're able to do in Los Angeles. I was in Los Angeles when that all started. We were serving criminal warrants on money fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, and cartel funding. We were serving criminal search warrants, and all hell broke loose because the left said we're doing immigration raids and just arresting people that look different from us. And for 2 days, ICE agents trying to.
Now, why would the left think that when you're going to Home Depots and you're kidnapping people?
Yeah,
kidnapping people who are just there to look for work in very very low wage jobs in a Home Depot parking lot, and you're kidnapping them. And so the left thought you were just kidnapping people based on the way that they look. Now, the silly, naive left, how could they possibly think that when really, if you're attacking people in Home Depot, you're going after money laundering for cartels? Is that what he wants us to believe?
Yeah. Exactly. That's what he wants to believe.
All right. Well, thank you, Tom Homan. Always great.
We have another Tom Homan clip for you. It's short but sweet.
Okay.
Protesters that we do see, I mean, some of it might be organic, but it does strike me that it seems like a lot of them are being bussed in. You see them at the end of these protests actually getting back on buses. Are these protesters, the bulk of them, are they actually being financed from?
Wow, there's a bus carrying people to a protest. Let's bring in even more troops. What does he want people to? I'll go by car. Unless you have a car to bring you to a protest, you aren't legitimate. Yeah, groups organize and they bus people. And by the way, everyone does that. So does
unless you're walking.
Like the pro-life movement or like the anti-abortion movement when they have the annual rally in DC, they have buses.
Yeah,
they have buses. Do we think that some foreign actors behind that too? I don't know. Let's investigate.
From the outside, and is that something that Homeland's looking at? Is the financing of how all these so-called organic protests are happening?
Absolutely. We know a lot of these protesters are being paid. Many of them admitted to it. So yes, there's a whole effort right now in identifying.
Okay, wait a second. Who has admitted, let alone many of them, who has admitted to being paid? What protester has admitted to being paid? Look at how effortlessly he lies, and look at how the host, who's a congressman, I can't remember his name, a former Republican congressman, Jason something. Look at how he doesn't obviously ask him to follow up. Imagine if there had been a single protester, much let alone many, who said I was paid. You don't think this would be wall-to-wall coverage? We'd all have heard of it.
And who's paying for it?
Well, I think we know.
Russian,
who's paying for it? Yeah. In fact, we're going to have a nice flashback in a second after this clip.
Who are funding these operations, those who fund the weapons that are being used. So yeah, and they'll be held accountable too, and held to the highest standards of the law. They will be prosecuted too.
All right. Well, I say put up or shut up. You know what I mean? Let's see the evidence.
None. There is none. Jason Chaffetz that's his name, Jason Chaffetz, but who happens to be half Jewish, half Christian Scientist, which must make him very conflicted because you're a hypochondriac and you can't take medication. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, All right, you're welcome, everyone. But let's take a flashback, take a look. Let's take a stroll down memory lane and look at someone who said something similar to what Homan's saying from the other side of the aisle.
In my house all the time, so I have a feeling for what feelings they have. But we have to think about what we're doing, and what we have to do is try to stop the suffering in Gaza. This is women and children, people who don't have a place to go. So let's address that. But for them to call for a ceasefire is Mr. Putin's message. Mr. Putin's message. Make no mistake, this is directly connected to what he would like to see. Same thing with Ukraine. It's about Putin's message. I think some of these protesters are spontaneous and organic and sincere. Some, I think, are connected to Russia. And I say that having looked at this for a long time now. As you know,
think some of these protests are Russian plants?
These are plants. I think some financing should be investigated. And I want to ask the FBI to investigate that.
So there you go, Aaron. When you said who's paying for it, I think we know. Russia.
I mean, I've kind of really maxed out the term, but I'll just say it one more time. Blueanon. I mean, come on. I mean, this is, like I haven't seen that clip in a while. And it's just amazing. It's crazy that both parties, like it's crazy enough to have one party saying this stuff. Like all the protesters against us, they're just foreign financed. We have both parties, everyone's saying it. I mean, come on. It's just too much.
Yeah, here's the difference between like Homan and Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi, being the great liberal progressive that she is, acknowledges that some of them are spontaneous and others are paid. Yeah. And for Homan, it's all of them are paid, or a majority.
Also, I mean, Nancy names names. I mean, she's calling out Putin. Homan, we didn't hear from him who he's talking about. So, credit to Nancy for at least putting a name on it.
Right.
But oh my Lord. Okay. Let's turn to Thomas Massie. Now, him and Ro Khanna have come together across the aisle to push forward a measure to release the so-called Epstein files, whatever is there. And House Speaker Mike Johnson was so afraid of disclosure on the Epstein files that he actually shut down Congress early this summer to avoid a vote on such a measure. And more recently, Mike Johnson, in defending Trump, suggested that Trump was actually an FBI informant against Jeffrey Epstein. So here's Thomas Massie speaking about that.
And get your response to Speaker Johnson right there. He says you've been misled. He also suggested at one point this week, seemed to suggest that President Trump was an informant to the FBI about Jeffrey Epstein. Your reaction?
Well, they haven't been misled. And the Speaker's point that the victim's safety is compromised or privacy is false, because when we asked the survivors at our event, did they support the legislation that Ro Khanna and I have introduced, they all said yes. Now, I don't know if the Speaker misspoke when he said that Donald Trump was an informant. The lawyers for the victim said that Donald Trump had been helpful in 2009 in their case by giving them information. But being an informant implies some formal connection and ongoing relationship with the FBI. I don't know what that's all about. I think the Speaker needs to clarify that. And if it's a hoax, why was Donald Trump an informant to a hoax?
Congressman.
So there you go. And Mike Johnson did subsequently clarify, so he didn't mean to call him an informant, but he did say that Trump actually cooperated with lawyers for Epstein's victims and gave them some useful information. But it was just funny, the idea of like Donald Trump being an FBI informant.
Yeah, CI, right?
On his old friend, on his old sexual predator friend.
Right.
Yeah. Really somehow, Trump as an admitted sexual predator, I don't see him snitching on somebody else. I just don't see Trump doing that. Yeah. Okay. More from Thomas Massie.
Do you think, Congressman Massie, the president is resisting the release?
I think it's going to be embarrassing to some of the billionaires, some of the donors who are politically connected to his campaign. I also think Democrats are going to be implicated in this, Democrat donors. And when you get to the billionaire level, a lot of these folks give to both parties anyway. There are probably intelligence ties to our CIA and maybe to other foreign intelligence and the American people. would be shocked, I think, to know that our intelligence agency was working with a pedophile who was running a sex trafficking ring. So these are the reasons I think that they're resisting this. But we can't avoid justice just to avoid embarrassments for some very powerful men.
Well, listen, people have heard my views on this. I think this is I think people are, if it gets released, I think people are in for a letdown. This idea that he thinks that there's like a sex trafficking ring linked to a foreign intelligence agency. I just think, listen, if it were true, it would, especially if it implicated Israel, I'd be thrilled to know about it. And I really welcome the fact that this has brought new scrutiny on Israel and that people could think that Israel would do something like this, because how else do you explain Israel's control of Congress? I think that's why many people are prone to believe this. But this strikes me as, it reminds me of Russiagate. There's a lot of hype. There's explosive allegations. But in terms of public evidence, I don't think it's there. But I'd love to be proven wrong.
Oh, we'll see. Yeah, I think the jury's still out. I'm more of a believer than you are, but we'll see.
What I don't think was appropriate was for Michael Tracy, journalist who was there at the press conference this week, Thomas Massie and Rokana, and some of Epstein's victims. He asked a question, and he got kicked out. He got kicked out just for asking a question, and he asked a fair question because there was one Epstein victim who had made some, admitted false statements, and he asked about her credibility and the fact that she was being relied on, and that's a fair question. And Marjorie Taylor Greene got him ejected from the press conference, and so I don't think you should eject. As maybe as grating as Michael Tracy is, you know what I mean, I don't think you should be kicking him out of news conferences.
Yeah, I have to watch that. I heard about it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on to.
We got one more clip.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Geez, we're at the end of the show. Actually, well, let's hear from Linda McMahon.
Oh yeah, she's great.
The Secretary of Education. And when you're the Secretary of Education, you think normally your job is like, how can we help educate people? How can we bolster support for public schools? Not when you're working for Donald J. Trump, whose top priority education-wise includes cracking down on the free speech of people who oppose Israel's genocide of Palestinians in Gaza. So here is Linda McMahon with an update on how that's going.
Yeah. And what's not. So let's talk about some of these legal battles. So Harvard, a ruling by a federal judge against the administration last week saying essentially you can't block the funding that was being blocked or frozen with respect to Harvard. Part of what she says is this: the issue is the impropriety of conditioning Harvard's federal funding on Harvard's realigning its campus to better reflect a viewpoint favored by the government. As such, the court finds that defendants imposed unconstitutional conditions on Harvard's receipt of federal funding in violation of the First Amendment. Essentially,
and this is a legalistic way of saying the Trump administration is conditioning federal support for schools, funding for schools, on them cracking down on free speech, especially free speech that defends the rights of Palestinians.
Right,
That's what is at issue here. And there was a court ruling basically going against Trump on this, saying, hey, you actually can't condition federal funding on being pro-Israel or on being on any kind of speech that you favor, because that's unconstitutional.
saying you're violating their speech because you're trying to tell them how to run their university.
So totally not true. So what we said to Harvard from the very beginning is, look, we want universities to be those places of truth seekers, of open debate, of open ideas. But Harvard is actually preventing that. You can't take away the freedom of speech of one group to say that you're giving it to another group. But this case was never about freedom of speech. This was about safety on campus. This was about anti-Semitism. This was about Title VI violations. Harvard knows that. So, and we're continuing to discuss things with Harvard. Harvard's a wonderful university. We want them to continue to grow and do all the things that they do, but they cannot do the things that they're doing relative to take away the rights of other students.
So basically, the argument here is, if you are a student on campus and you support genocide in Gaza, and you see other students protesting genocide in Gaza, then your rights are being infringed. That's the Trump administration argument. And so happy that we have a Department of Education that is committed to policing people's speech so as not to trigger pro-genocide students and wealthy donors, because that's really what this is about. All the crackdowns have come at the behest of wealthy donors to all these schools, Columbia, Penn, Harvard. That's what really all this is about. And luckily, they have a champion in former wrestling executive Linda McMahon.
Yeah, I like the way she's just trying to help Harvard achieve its full potential. But you know what, Aaron? I think we should be happy about this crackdown on free speech because she is the sister of the great Eric Prince of Blackwater. And when they crack down, they actually kill people. In this case, they're just going after speech. So maybe we should be grateful because who knows? Maybe she'll instead get Eric Prince to oversee an actual shootout.
I think you're mixing her up with Betsy DeVos.
I am. You're right. Thank you.
Betsy,
the other education person.
Trump's
yeah.
first
Sorry
education
about that.
secretary. Yeah, Betsy DeVos,
Yeah.
who comes from a very wealthy family.
Right.
And
You're right. Linda's the wrestling one. Sorry about that.
Linda's in another,
legacy family,
illustrious family of wrestling magnates, including married to Vince McMahon, who was accused of being a sexual predator by his own employees, among other, all the other corruption and like activity that goes into a professional wrestling operation, which is a whole other story.
Yeah. I take the L on that. Not yet on Kissinger. In fact, this was actually intentional. That was a lesson to show you guys how you can be wrong on something and right on something else. So thanks for supporting me as I engaged in that teachable moment. That was just a lesson.
All right. Well, that's our show. Katie, anything you want to promote this week for the Katie Halper Show?
Yes. We have Seth Harp joining tomorrow, the great journalist and also the author of an amazing book called The Fort Bragg Cartel, which is like it reads like a spy, like a thriller, but it's actually reported journalism. And there you got it right there. It's Fort Bragg Cartel. Yeah, it's really good. And what else? I got a bunch of stand by for some Nick Bryant. He and Michael Tracy do not get along, but I did interview Nick Bryant, and I actually asked him about Michael Tracy. So stand by for that. He has an interesting proposition for Michael Tracy. And I think that's about it. But yeah, good times all around. Good times at the Katie Halper Show. Good times at Useful Idiots.
All right. Thank you so much for watching Monday Morning. To support our show, keep us going, go to usefulidiots.podcast.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.